Good afternoon, WIMDI. Hello, it's lovely to see you. For those of you who have not met me before or don't know who I am, my name is Louise Lee, and I am a leadership and life coach based in Vancouver, BC. I am here today on behalf of WIMDI and Holly to have a quick chat to you, a lunchtime lunch and learn called Put Words in My Mouth. I'm going to put words in your mouth, ladies and gentlemen, and also go through the topic today around setting expectations and boundaries. I'm getting the impression that this is probably the kind of thing that we could all, most of us, me included, do with a refresher regularly. And so today's all about enforcing expectations and boundaries. So here's what we mean by this. Boundaries are things that are okay or not okay to do within our presence, your presence. Expectations are things that you expect other people to do or not do. And expectations might come with a timeline. They might come with specific performance criteria. Say we're thinking about work, or even if we're thinking about home as well. So for example, if you live with other people, you might be thinking right now, hells yeah, I'm sitting at working from home and the kitchen's a mess because my so-and-so left it that way. Expectations. Okay. So whether we realize it or not, expectations, boundaries are part of our everyday communication, which is why we thought this would be the perfect, very first put words in my mouth topic for this webinar series from WIMDI. This is also why I'm going to go straight in there, because time is of the essence today, and give you the main distinction for today. We are talking about turning expectations into agreements. I'll give you a very quick explanation as to why. The reason is how do you feel when someone says to you, here's what I expect from you, or this is what I expect? Okay, so it could be at work, it could be at home. I don't know about you, but when I hear that, my gut instinct is to rebel, is to say, no, I don't want to. Maybe some of you feel that way from certain people in your life. It could be at work, it could be a boss, or it could be someone from another department, from another discipline. Maybe one or two of you are having flashbacks to your childhood. I know I certainly do, where there were expectations from my family to be a certain way or do a certain thing. So expectations often come a little bit loaded, especially when they are implied and not explicit, and especially when it's a one-way street, as in somebody's putting their expectations onto you. Nobody likes having expectations put upon them by someone else. And let's be honest, we were not put here on earth in the world to live up to other people's expectations. That's why this distinction can be incredibly helpful about agreements. So what we're going to talk about today is how to set expectations, yes, but even more powerful than that is how to have a conversation where we can come up with an agreement. So instead of being a one-way monologue, it becomes a two-way dialogue. Okay, so here are some things that you may want to have this conversation about. And we're thinking primarily in the workplace here. So for example, it could be around punctuality. If you have regular meetings and there's somebody who's always late, maybe they're a senior stakeholder, and it grates you and frustrates you, you may want to have a conversation with them about it. It could also be to do with swearing, for example, or using certain language. Maybe somebody keeps mispronouncing your name or keeps using the wrong pronouns and it drives you absolutely bananas. Or it could be somebody just constantly interrupts or talks over, maybe not talks over you, but maybe talks over somebody else in the meeting. And quite frankly, you're sick of it. So the reason why this all matters is because other people aren't the same as us. We all have different ways of looking at the world. And for some people, it's okay to interrupt. Maybe they grew up in a household where they were constantly talking over each other, and that was just how they communicated. We can't read each other's minds. So if we don't express what's okay for us, what our expectations are, then it is on us if they don't get met. So my friends, it is on you if you don't speak up and say something about this, right? Now, of course, this doesn't apply if somebody else is being abusive. That's almost a whole other situation. But let's assume that there's a level of respect and trust there. So when we want to give feedback or express a boundary or an expectation, we want to make sure we're heard, because if we're not heard or if we don't bring it up, then it actually might jeopardize the relationship. And if any of you are thinking, yeah, there's a reason why I haven't spoken up so far because I'm worried about potentially jeopardizing the relationship, you can put your hand up so that people who can see you know that they're not alone. So if you've ever felt that way, stick your hand up so people know they're not alone. So having a conversation about your expectations, your boundaries, and your needs will increase the probability that they'll actually get met and that you can have a two-way conversation with them about it. And the reason this is so important, because as I touched upon earlier, implied expectations are actually harmful to your relationship with the other person, mainly because the other person doesn't even know they exist. They are in your head and your head only. So all of a sudden you're now feeling frustrated towards them and they don't know why. Secondly, they're not actually agreed upon. You may think that, well, of course, people should expect to behave a certain way. Of course, drivers should stop at the stop sign, for example, okay? But if it's not actually agreed upon out loud with the other human being, then it's not an agreement. Another thing is that if you have expectations of somebody else, chances are they will lead to disappointment and possibly resentment, because if you don't communicate your expectations and have it agreed, then chances of your expectations being met are probably slim to none. And nobody wants to live a life that basically died with many expectations and a whole bucket of resentment and disappointment. So we don't want that to be you. So this is another reason why it's great to practice sharing your expectations with others. And also, if you are managing anybody in the workplace or even in your communities or maybe at home, either formally or informally, this is foundational to every performance conversation, every just general conversation that you'll have down the line in all areas of your life. It opens up the possibility of much greater connection. And if you want a two-way dialogue instead of just a one-way monologue. And another good thing is you might just get what you want, and it might be easier than you think. Okay, let's jump straight into the 4-step conversation structure. I'm going to take you through very quickly. It's nice and simple. And if you want to follow along, I have my really flashy cards. Okay, so the first step in having this conversation, first of all, let's set the scene here. Let's have it implied that you are inviting the other person to a conversation and they have RSVP'd yes, and you are now having a conversation with them. Okay, so the first step, and this is based on Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication and nonviolent conversations. The first step is to express the facts, your observations. Okay, so this could be, I noticed. So let's use punctuality. I noticed for our weekly team meetings, Barbara, that you often join the call after it started. Okay, so we're now talking purely on just observation and fact. That is it. No feelings, no emotions, nothing. Something that you have observed that if somebody else was there, they would corroborate with you. Okay, so it's fairly objective. Okay, so facts and behaviors. Second part, the impact. Okay, so this could be, for example, how what you observed actually had you feel, what you may have thought, maybe an assumption you might have made. So let's continue with this punctuality example. So Barbara, I noticed that for our weekly team meetings, you often join after the call has started. When I notice that you're late, it makes me jump to a whole bunch of conclusions and think a couple of things such as, perhaps you don't think this meeting is a priority for you, or you have another meeting, a competing one that always runs long for you every Wednesday at 11, or you're not sure whether this meeting is important or why you need to come or what you need to contribute. Okay, so that gives you an example of step number 2, the impact on you, what it makes you think, perhaps what it makes you feel. The third part to the 4-part of the conversation is the request. So this is where you share what it is that you may be requesting from them. If anything, chances are, if something is happening and you want it to change, you may well have a request. And this is a key thing to remember. Any complaint that you have, if left alone, if not resolved, will turn into a resentment. And some of you are probably thinking, yep, I know. So the idea here is to turn a complaint into a request. And then that request can then turn into what we're building here, which is an agreement. And chances are when it becomes an agreement, it will be met. So never leave any complaints unresolved, turn a complaint into a request, and then your request can become an agreement. So step number 3 is your request, and your request can be anything you want. For example, it could be here, it could be, can we have a conversation to figure out how we can set this up differently? Or is there any way that I could ask you to attend the meeting on time? Or what would we need to do to enable you to join us at the beginning of the meeting, because your presence is important? Okay, so that's a request. Now, your request may not be a question. Your request might be a statement. So it could be, for example, I would love it if all participants could attend on time. Or Barbara, I would love it if you could join us when the meeting starts. Okay, and that leads us straight to the 4th part, which is ending with a question. So the question could be, what do you think about that? It could be something super general like that. Or it could be as direct as, is this something that we can agree on? Is this something you're willing to do? If you want to have a more general question, a more open question, if you want more conversation, then a question you could finish with could be, what are your thoughts on this? Or what do you think? Or if you want something almost even more diplomatic, you could say, what might be something we can agree on here that works for both of us? Okay. Or even, can we have a conversation to figure out how we can set this up differently? You know, what are your thoughts on this? Okay. So just to go through that quickly, you're sharing a fact, an observation, the impact on you, and the impact on you may be more than just thoughts and feelings. It may be, this doesn't allow me to do my job, right? I don't have the necessary information I need to be able to do this. Okay, that could be an impact too. And then your request followed by your question. All right. So that's it. That's the 4-step structure. I think it's also in the chat in case you want to follow along there.